who is in Burlington, Ontario. Hello, Alison.
Hi, Mark. Hi, everybody. I'll make this quick. I just want to take a hard turn. I want to talk about the opioid crisis in Canada, Mark, and the fact that patients like myself who are legally authorized to use different substances need help. We've been begging the government, as I did again on Friday. I phoned both Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh's office to tell them, please ask them, beg them to stop by and see me in my bed up here, my 13 really steep stairs at the top of my house, because patients like us, Mark, need access, but also patients and other people are dying because there's no legal access to any of these substances.
I appreciate your call, and I'm sorry for your struggles, Alison. Thank you for calling. Justin, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've covered the opioid crisis pretty extensively over the years, and it's incredibly frustrating. You know, I talked earlier about the fact that a lot of really crucial issues don't get enough play, especially in these really stilted debates, and the opioid crisis is front and center. I mean, the opioid crisis has killed roughly the same number of people in this country as COVID-19. Where is that in our federal election conversation right now? Justin Trudeau pats himself on the back for the work that he's done, and yet it's very, very clear, according to every single harm reduction advocate, public health expert, medical expert that I've spoken with, and who have kind of expressed their position publicly, that he's done a woefully inadequate job. At the same time, there's a lot of patients who actually need access to opiates and opioids who are having that access restricted for a variety of reasons. Our entire sort of regulatory apparatus here is completely broken. And it is really disheartening to not watch this get the amount of airtime that it really genuinely, seriously deserves in this election. And frankly, no candidate is, a lot of candidates are saying the right thing. Even Erin O'Toole has come around and started talking seriously about this issue and addressing it like a health crisis. Yet no single leader has a platform or a strategy that would actually end this crisis. Jagmeet Singh gets the closest by heeding the calls of virtually everybody who's an expert on this topic and committing to decriminalization as a first step. But frankly, even his position is insufficient to face the level of death and the level of injury we're actually seeing here. So it's really frustrating. I can only imagine the number of people who've lost a family member, who've lost a child out there, watching this election and watching this issue get roundly ignored. I can only imagine how frustrating it is for them.
Yeah, and it's not the only issue, obviously, that is not getting as much attention as perhaps it should. And David, this is always the case with elections. We end up spending a lot of time talking about a small number of issues, and then the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we end up really not dealing with the stuff that was talked about in the election campaign and dealing with a bunch of other things, some of which were unanticipated, but some of which quite logically could have been anticipated. And a previous caller, for example, alluded to the potential for inflation to become a problem, or rising interest rates to make the rising level of government debt in this country become an issue. So there are lots of things that we'll be talking about 6 months from now, a year from now, that we're not talking about during this campaign, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the other big ones is healthcare. And we're talking a lot about healthcare and health transfers and who's going to give how much money to the provinces, and 3% versus 6% and so on. But I think as a country, we have not reckoned with the way that health spending is set to eat provincial budgets. If you look at the reports from the various parliamentary budget officer and the provincial equivalents, they show that the federal government, in spite of all the spending of the last year and a half, thanks to the pandemic, assuming that winds down, the federal government fiscally is actually in pretty good shape, but the provinces are in big trouble. As we get older, as we get sicker, as we live longer, but with chronic conditions that require medical care and require drugs and will have us living longer, we hope, more happily in nursing homes than people have been. It is going to cost billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. And hardly anybody in a position of power talks about any of the reforms that are going to be needed.
Yeah, and you listed a bunch of reasons why it's going to get more expensive. Another reason is we're inventing new ways of treating illnesses, which are expensive. So once upon a time, a certain illness couldn't be treated. Now there is a treatment, but there's a cost associated with that treatment that we have to pay. So there's a bunch of reasons why the costs are going up.